Hello and welcome to a movie podcast I like to call What Gets Captured on Film. I am your host. My name is Dylan Paulson, and I am a movie lover, much like I hope many of you who are out there listening to this are as well. This show was created and conceived and produced by me to help the common moviegoer learn a little something about the film industry. I found myself being surrounded by a lot of coverage of other things that I really enjoyed, such as video games. And I thought that there could be some sort of podcast conversation similar to those that go on in the video game space, but for movies. And I thought that I was the perfect person to do that. Some things that we're going to cover in this podcast, and I mean the show generally, not just this specific show, the first episode 1. The things that we're going to cover in the show: what gets captured on film, what makes a good movie, what goes on in the industry to produce the movies that we love, what movies should we be on the lookout for and why. But ultimately, and this is going to be a common recurring theme for the show, is you should watch whatever you want. You should enjoy whatever you want, and no one should tell you otherwise, especially me, because sometimes I can get a little high and mighty on my little high horse. But, what do I know? What does anyone really know? If you're enjoying a movie, you should continue to enjoy that movie. I think that's going to be a theme that comes up over and over again. A lot of times, people within the movie space seem to have this air of, I'm not exactly sure the word, overconfidence about them if they know a lot about movies. And it just attracts, film school especially, attracts a lot of people that are overly confident and arrogant in themselves. And I really don't want to attract that type of audience, although all are welcome to listen to the show and enjoy the show. But I really wanted to bring some sort of accessibility to enjoying movies and watching them and understanding what makes them good and all that sort of stuff. But if you are enjoying movies without my help, then feel free to just listen to the show for the news, because that is definitely a huge factor as well. Why do I think I'm a good person to host the show is a question you might be asking yourself. Who am I? Who am I? I'm Dylan. I was an actor on stage. I did live shows for 8 consecutive years while I was growing up. I stopped at the age of 19 to go to undergrad, pursue my undergraduate degree in business. And then I acted again for another year doing auditions, and I had one professional gig. We don't have to get into that right now, during COVID recently. So I have that huge acting background. I like to consider myself pretty good. And I can definitely say that when I look at a good performance, I know when it's good. And bad performances especially stand out to me, no doubt. I also took screenwriting classes during my pursuit of a business undergrad. I completed 2 screenplays in that time, and I learned what makes good writing. A good screenplay, much like a good book. Well, a good screenplay is much like a good book. They have to be written well. And I think a lot of people underestimate how important and pivotal a screenplay is to how good the movie's going to be. I think a good example, we might get into this later, but a good example would be a movie that came out this week, The Many Saints of Newark. I didn't watch it myself, but I hear that there's a lot of criticism over it, and I think what ultimately goes wrong is that the script isn't very good, regardless of who's in it or who's directing it. If the script isn't good, the movie's not going to be good, because once you get into production and you have, here now I'm rambling a little bit, but once you get into production and you have, hundreds of people on the set, if it's a big movie, and they're all waiting for the actors to perform. You don't really, as a director, as a producer, or as the writer, if you're on set, don't really have time to go back to the screenplay and say, well, this line isn't really working. Maybe in an indie film you do when you have like 10, 15 people on set, but not in the case of a movie like The Many Saints of Newark. I'm not saying that that's what happened with that movie. I didn't even watch the movie. And again, if you enjoyed it, then you should enjoy it. Go ahead and enjoy The Many Saints of Newark. Why else would I be a good reason to host the show? You might still be asking. Well, I graduated from Drexel University with a business degree. Drexel is a school in Philadelphia, has a very prestigious business program. It's also a prestigious engineering school. I took a few classes in engineering. And I like to think that most people who analyze the film industry don't really have a background in business. I don't have any data to back this up. It just seems like around the conversations around movies, there seems to be a lot of conjecture about the quality of the movies, which I want to do here as well, but not a lot of people really have the vested interests in the business. And I think there is a need to have that vested interest, and I definitely do. I studied business, so that's that. And then I also believe that conversations around movies should be positive. I think a lot of critics or influencers, on YouTube or other people that are podcasting tend to have podcasts or conversations, I should say, tend to have conversations that are overall negative. People think that talking about movies means critiquing movies means being negative about movies. And I just don't agree. I love movies, and all I want to do is gush about them and talk about how good they are. I can obviously recognize when a movie does something wrong, and sometimes even I can be at fault when I can gush about how many things a movie did that was wrong. It misstepped in these places, but at the end of the day, I want to enjoy movies. I love them. That's why I started the show. So I want to keep that conversation kind of positive. So there you go. There's a little intro about me. My name again, Dylan Paulson. And this is what gets captured on film. This is the first episode. So now that you have a little background about me and what I want this show to be about, it's just me here. Might gain a co-host or two in the weeks or months to come. But for now, it's just me. For no other reason other than I wanted to do the show by myself. So let's talk about what I have been up to this week. What have I been watching? In no particular order, I'll just list these things in the So this is what I'm going to do each week. I'll give you a brief outline of the show just before we get into all the smaller sub details. Going to talk about what I watched this week, and that is a conversation that I could have about anything that I watched. It doesn't have to be limited to movies, although typically I want the show to be geared toward movies. I don't really have a strong knowledge about television shows in the same way I do about movies. So what I watched this week will be about anything. And if I am feeling a certain way about a certain video game or a certain book or whatever, that is the place for that. And then after that, I'll get into, and in that same breath, what am I watching this week? If a new movie has come out and I watched it, just for example, just to gain a little more background into me as well. When The Last Night in Soho comes out later this month, October 29th, I'm going to watch it opening weekend, and I'm going to talk about it. And that's going to be the review, my informal, formal, whatever you want to call it. That's the review is going to be the following. I guess this show is going to come out on Wednesday or Thursday. We'll gear for Wednesday. I don't even know. I'm just recording this. Just so you know, Tuesday, October 5th. That's when we're recording this, when I'm recording this. So that'll be the time for that too. Any new movie reviews that came out. So if I had a vested interest in The Sopranos and I watched The Many Saints of Newark, you would be hearing about my opinion about it today. But I do not. So that's what we go forward. And then after that, we go through the news. What news broke over the course of the week pertaining to movies? What are the big news stories, and what does it mean for the movies that we are anticipating? Are there any new trailers, etc.? And then we'll get into some smaller news stories. Just a movie gets delayed, a movie gets a release date, new actors are being pulled into movies, yada yada yada. You'll see what that's like there. And then we'll go into what's coming up what's coming to theaters in the following week, what I might be seeing, what sounds interesting. And then we'll get into some end of the show questions. I don't know if I'm going to keep that last section, but we'll see when we get there. Okay, so let's get into what I've been watching this week. So since it's October and it's a little spooky, I've been on a kick to watch all of the Evil Dead movies. I feel like these movies have just been hanging over my head for years almost. I've been hearing so much about how good the Evil Dead and the Evil Dead 2 are. So I've been going through them, and I'm actually going to see... I've seen all of them. I've seen all the movies now. The Evil Dead, which is released widely in 1981. Low-budget Sam Raimi movie, Bruce Campbell, made them famous, blah, blah, blah. Evil Dead 2, horror comedy from 87. Then Army of Darkness, which is kind of a straight comedy with bits of horror in it, like kind of an action thriller, I think from 93, if I'm not mistaken. And then that's the trilogy. That's the Evil Dead trilogy. And then Evil Dead gets a remake in 2013, and then there was a 3-season TV show called Ash vs. Evil Dead from 2015 to 2018 on Starz. It was one of the first. It was one of the pioneering shows of streaming central exclusive content, and that was called Ash vs. Evil Dead. So this past week, I watched the Evil Dead remake from 2013. I went through them all. Yeah, I went through the movies in order. And Evil Dead, the remake came in the mail via Blu-ray. I had just bought it, so it came in the mail. I watched it this week. And it was good. There were some performances that were not great. But that was really only the first 10, 15 minutes of the movie. And a lot of times a movie can just be like that, where the first 10, 15, 20, 30 minutes are just boring and lackluster and flat. And that's kind of because of the way, unintentionally, the way the movie's written. A movie gets pitched with a concept, right? And the concept is going to be what is interesting about the movie and what's different about it. In the case of Evil Dead, these kids go into a cabin in the woods, they read from the Book of the Dead, and then evil haunts them and one by one murders them all is pretty much the plot of the movie. And that's not really spoiling anything either. So that's the concept. The fun in quotes part of the movie is the scary part. And that is after the first act break, which is, reading the Book of the Dead is the first act break. So anything before that is kind of just going to feel a little slow. If anyone is at fault, it's probably the director on that one. You got to have a good screenplay. And if you're the director, the buck ends with you. And so even if a few performances are a little flat, and I noticed that there were performances that were flat by a few people that later on in the movie go on to do incredible work. So it really was just maybe production was quick, maybe the director just wasn't paying attention, because it's really not that important, the first 10, 15 minutes, especially of an Evil Dead movie. The first Evil Dead, the book gets read in the first 10 minutes. And then it's just action-packed horror the whole time. So maybe that was the idea. Maybe they wanted to do kind of a cheesy horror movie, just like the first Evil Dead was. The performances, how the characters interact with their backstories wasn't really that important. So maybe they were trying to do something like that. But after the first act break, once you get into the actual horror movie, it is really good. It is classic Evil Dead horror. Some things really caught me off guard. I love the use of practical effects, which is a staple of the Evil Dead franchise. Famous Evil Dead story is that the first one was made for, I don't know, like a few $1,000s in the wood, in a literal abandoned cabin that Sam Raimi and crew just found in the woods, and they decided to make it a little film set. And for a few $1,000s, they had to struggle to make money and to raise the finances to make the film. It's a great story about how careers can get made. And I don't know if they can get made in that same way anymore, but that's beside the point. Ultimately, I loved it. I really did love it. Other than a few performances that were a little lackluster, I mean, what a great movie. And the last, I would say, 10, 15 minutes are incredible, without spoiling anything. If anyone wants to go out and watch the Evil Dead remake, they absolutely should, especially in October. What a great Halloween movie. All right, the next thing I want to get into is Val. I watched this movie called Val. It's on Amazon Prime right now. It is a documentary on Val Kilmer, and it was produced by him, and it is pretty much just an amalgamation, a retelling of his life and what it means to be an actor, and how an actor can kind of get sucked into their roles, and how the public sees actors. It's a really interesting documentary. If you have Amazon Prime, which you probably do, if you are a frequent Amazon user, you probably have Prime. You should just go ahead and watch it. It's included with Prime. It's great movie. I think it's less than 2 hours. It's great. Very emotional, very wholesome. Narrated by Val Kilmer's son, because Val Kilmer had some sort of throat cancer and now has a very tough time talking. That is explainable within the first few minutes of the movie. Yeah, highly recommend. Very good. All right, the next movie I want to get into, another horror movie, which is kind of going to be the theme for the next few episodes because of Halloween, is Quiet Place Part 2. And this was my first time watching this as well as the other two. The other two movies. So a lot of times I'll rewatch movies, but not actually this week. All the movies I watched this week, I watched for the first time. So Quiet Place Part 2, I was thinking about the first movie, the first A Quiet Place movie, and I think it's going to go down in horror movie history as one of the best movies, one of the best horror movies of all time. When we think about other horror movies that are legendary, besides The Evil Dead, let's think about something else, like Alien or Jaws. The beast, the creature, isn't shown until the end. So the whole time we as the audience are thinking, what is this thing? And the thought of it is scary. The thought of seeing it is scary because it lives in our head as we're watching the movie. And going into A Quiet Place Part 2, I think that was the thing that weakened the movie a little bit, was that we already had seen this thing. In the case of Alien, to its sequel, Aliens, plural, directed by James Cameron, they decided to do away with the horror element of the movie, and they just made it a straight action movie. A tense, thrilling action movie. I don't love Aliens as much as I do the first one, and I think that that's the case kind of here with A Quiet Place and A Quiet Place Part 2. And I think they did a good job. The movie is still kind of scary, but it is definitely more action-based. And I think that they did a good thing with that. We see a lot of other, tribal type humans, where they're living, how they're living. It's It's really interesting to further establish that world. Um, I liked it a lot. I think ultimately it was weakened by just being a sequel, which is kind of a shame that a movie is just going to come out and we already think less of it. But I think that is the case in the case of movies that their predecessor is so good that, the sequel just is looked at a little less than. Which is a shame, but I think that's the case here, at least for me. Again, if you enjoyed Quiet Place Part 2, enjoy it all you want. The next movie I want to talk about is A Nightmare Before Christmas. Again, another Halloween movie. This was my first time seeing it. I have never seen this movie. My girlfriend and I watched it on Disney Plus. I thought it was very cute. I love musicals. I did stage for many years. I did staged musicals for many years, I should say. And I liked it a lot. I thought it was cute. I thought it was a really interesting take on a Christmas movie. I thought the Halloween world, Halloween Town as it's called in the movie, is so cool and interesting. Jack Skellington's an interesting character. If anything, I wish the movie was longer. I wish it was like 20 minutes longer, because living in that world is so fun and exciting, and it made me feel like a kid. So the next piece of business I want to take care of is what else I was watching other than movies. I've been going through a few shows in my spare time. And again, I don't really want this show to become a television show. This podcast, because I don't really have the knowledge of television in the same way that I do about movies. I'll talk about them when it pertains to movies in the news. I'll talk about them when I'm watching a show, but ultimately I am a movie guy, and that's what I want this show to stay as. Sorry about that. But so what have I been watching this week? I've been watching Schitt's Creek, which is an excellent pop TV original Canadian sitcom from Dan Levy, Eugene Levy. My sister actually recommended me this show like years ago, 2 years ago, maybe 3 years ago. And then I finally wound up giving it the time of day after it won, it swept the Emmys, in its most recent year. And now I feel like a poser watching it all after the Emmys won, but yeah, I'm getting through it. I am on season 5, I think, partway through season 5. I love the show, and then season 3 I thought was so slow, and the writers didn't really have any direction for any of the characters. They were all kind of like meandering about. And then seasons 4 and 5 were absolutely amazing. It is such a fun, wholesome, lighthearted comedy. It feels great. I highly recommend people watching it. All 6 seasons are on Netflix, and I'm getting through it. I am also watching Arrested Development. I've seen the show a bunch of times. I'm watching it through with my girlfriend who is watching it for the first time all the way through. We just started season 3. I love this show. This is one of my favorite shows of all time, if not my favorite show. I'm not going to try and sell you on Arrested Development. You should just watch it. It is comedy at its peak. It is so funny. It is so clever and so unique. When Arrested Development is on, it demands your attention for 22 minutes an episode. It is superb. You don't need to watch anything after season 3, but seasons 4 and 5 are on Netflix if you want them. Seasons 1 through 3 are also on Netflix, and they are incredible. They're incredible. I could go on, but I want to get through the rest of the show. The next and the last thing that I want to talk about before we get into the news is I've also been watching Ash vs. Evil Dead. Like I said earlier, Evil Dead has been on my mind, and I've been watching the show, which takes place after Army of Darkness, which is the 3rd movie. So essentially, the show is the 4th movie. It's a 3-season 4th movie. It takes place well after Army of Darkness, with Bruce Campbell as Ash. He returns as Ash. Sam Raimi, Ted Raimi, And the producer, I forget his name, of the first 3 movies also returned as producers. Sam Raimi directs the pilot. I think there are some things about the movie the show, that are exceptional. It's classic Evil Dead, classic horror comedy. Bruce Campbell kills it. Some of the supporting characters kill it, and it's fun to watch. But then there are some times that the show it doesn't use practical effects 100% of the time, and your eye sees it, right? We're talking about 2015, and we're talking about Star's original series when there wasn't very many exclusive streaming shows. I mean, the budget is high, but it's not so high that the CG tricks your eye. You can just tell that some things are fake. Blood splatters, some supernatural things, you can just tell. And it pulls me out of the show. It's a shame, because otherwise the show's really good. Sometimes the writing isn't great. The banter between the characters can be a little off, but the saving grace of the whole show is that Bruce Campbell is in it, and he's spectacular. He could almost never deliver a line incorrectly. He's just incredible. So funny, super inventive with the character of Ash. It's fun. It's a really funny show. It's Evil Dead in the modern age. It's very fun to watch. So, and I'm only halfway through the first season, and there are 3 seasons, so I have a lot to go. I don't want to bring the show up over and over again, but in the following weeks, we'll see how it progresses. Okay, so let's get into the news. What are the big news stories for this week? Number 1. IATSE, or the International Alliance of Theatrical Stage Employees, Moving Picture Technicians, Artists, and Allied Crafts of the United States, its territories, and Canada, almost unanimously voted to authorize a strike, marking the first time in the union's history that they have done so. The union themselves announced the results of a poll sent out to union members via Twitter, with a publication to their website moments later. The results of the poll declared that nearly 90% of eligible union members cast their vote, and of that, nearly 99% voted to authorize a strike. According to IATSE President Matthew Loeb, who writes on their website, the need for the strike revolves around, quote, quality of life, as well as the health and safety of those who work in the film and television industry. Our people have basic human needs like time for meal breaks, adequate sleep, and a weekend. For those at the bottom of the pay scale, they deserve nothing less than a living wage, end quote. Last week, Loeb spoke to the LA Times about what will need to happen to avoid a strike, claiming they are, quote, fighting for higher pay, larger contributions to health and pension plans, and improved rest periods and meal breaks, as well as a bigger cut of the profits from streaming productions, end quote. The latter is most likely a huge sticking point for the producers, as we saw from the important legal battle between Scarlett Johansson and Disney in regard to receiving payment for box office grosses, when a larger portion of media has been moved to having debuts on streaming platforms. The legal dispute between Disney and Johansson is now settled. Disney and Johansson announced last week in a mutually beneficial statement. IATSE, should they not receive proper compensation for projects they debut on streaming platforms, can certainly look toward the outcome of the Johansson versus Disney case, a sign that something is amiss, and going on strike might be worth the effort. Okay, that's a big news story, and I feel like a lot of people aren't really covering this. A lot of publications I read through, in compiling the news, I've read through The Hollywood Reporter, Variety, and Deadline, and no one really seems to be, getting a lot of press about this. IATSE is a labor union, has over 150,000 members in it, and it is almost everyone that works in the movie industry that you know of, anyone that you know their name, is in this union. I mean, it is huge. I think in the LA Times, they said the union has been around for 128 years, and they've never once gone on strike. This union is huge. If it goes on, if they go on strike, Hollywood will shut down. And the most recent strike, I think, is the writer's strike from like 2008, 2009. And Hollywood did kind of shut down from the writer's strike. And that just goes to show you how important writers are. So the writer's strike, here's a little history for you. The writer's strike started when there were, writers from The Office that were doing short sketches, and they were, filming them and producing them and whatever, and they were put on the Office website or the NBC website, and then they weren't getting paid for them. So that was the, what's the phrase? The start of bad news for writers that, oh, is this what it's going to be like in the future? That if we write something and then it gets put online instead of broadcast television or instead of in a movie theater, that we're not going to get paid for it. And, a lot of people banded together, people that have had similar types of experiences, writers, and they went on strike. In a similar way that the IATSE seems to be doing now, they, took a vote, they authorized a strike, and a deal could not be met with, at that time, I think it was TV studios, and they went on strike. And it shut down Hollywood for, 9 months or whatever it was. So in this case, IATSE is looking at the conditions that their union members are going through, 12-hour plus days, working on the weekends, not getting meals, and they're seeing that there's a problem here. And there clearly is, because when 99% of the people that vote yes to a strike, which ultimately puts them out of work for X amount of time. They don't even know. If they go on strike, they're not going to get paid for, you don't even know when you're going to work again. You might never work again. So it's a big deal that these people are willing to, 99% of people are willing to go on strike, then, continue to work long, hard hours and miss meals and whatever, but receive a paycheck. So I want to go through a few potential outcomes of this situation. So what is happening is today, the date that I'm recording this, there's more conversations in place behind the scenes between the IATSE, which is a union. The full name is hilariously long, by the way. I forgot to point that out. It is hilariously long. Between the IATSE and movie production studios. In this case, it is the overarching Producers Guild. Let me look up what it's called. AFP. AMPTP. The Alliance of Motion Picture and Television Producers. So the IATSE and the AMPTP are in conversations with each other. And this is kind of a type of conversation and a type of news story that I think doesn't attract a lot of attention, because a lot of people just don't want to talk about this. They don't really want to talk about the unions. They don't really want to talk about what's going on behind the scenes. And ultimately, it's kind of boring because we don't really know what's happening. But here, let me run you through what I think is going to happen and a few potential outcomes and what that means for future productions. So what could happen? The two parties in question could come to an agreement, and then production would resume on everything. I don't think anything's shut down actually right now, but production would continue then on everything. We wouldn't even notice. This story would be nothing. Ultimately, I think that is what is going to happen. What could happen if they don't come to an agreement is that the IATSE will go on strike, which includes every union. Any person that works in Hollywood is in a union. SAG-AFTRA is a union. They're a part of IATSE. If you hold a boom mic, you're part of a union. If you operate the camera, you're part of a union. Directors are part of a union, the DGA. I mean, these are American unions, but all of those types of union, literally everyone that works on a film set that is produced by a major studio is part of a union. You cannot work on a union picture without being in a union. And if the IATSE goes on strike, Hollywood will shut down. Zero. Nothing will happen except for indies. That is all that could happen, because if you are part of a union, you are therefore not allowed to work on any non-union picture. So the only thing that would be produced in that time, if the IATSE shut down Hollywood, would be people and productions that were non-union. What's a non-union picture? To be honest, I can't even think of an example. From this past year, Never, Rarely, Sometimes, Always, I think, was non-union. That was that got a big push. An independent movie does not necessarily mean that it's non-union. For instance, Nomadland, which won Best Picture, was union. That was a union picture. I mean, directed by Chloe Zhao, and Frances McDormand stars in it. Frances McDormand is part of a union. Obviously, she's a 2-time Academy Award winner. I think 3-time now. So that, so just because a movie is an indie does not mean that it's not a union picture. A movie that is not a union picture, I can't even, Evil Dead, the original Evil Dead movie was not a union picture. So because if the IATSE goes on strike and Hollywood will shut down, that is why I think that is not going to happen. I think that the Producers Guild is going to do everything in their power to not cause a strike. And I don't think the IATSE wants to go on strike either. After a year and a half of COVID and people struggling for work and not a lot of production going on, I think that the people want to work. I just think that they want to go to work safely with proper wages, with proper hours and proper meals, etc. And they get paid for things that eventually make their way to streaming. I don't think that anyone that works on a movie and then that movie goes streaming should get a pay cut. That's no decision of the crew. That is a decision of the producers, right? So ultimately what I think is going to happen is the Producers Guild and the IATSE will come to an agreement. Hollywood will resume, because if you think about it, COVID, halting all production for a few months, I think it was, and then they resumed in the summer making pictures again. No, studios have been in a lull with movies. People haven't been going to the theater. They haven't been making their money. And they definitely don't want to halt that any farther. They've lost enough money. I think that that's it. I think I've said it. I think I've made my point about that, actually. I'll stop rambling. That's what I think is going to happen. I think that this news story is a big deal, and I think that people need to pay attention to it and talk about it and give it the light it deserves. But ultimately, I don't really think anything is going to come of this. Okay, let's move on. Enough of that. Number 2, the movie theaters are back with a vengeance. After much talk about what the post-pandemic theater scene would look like, we now know this. It won't be much different. Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings becomes the first movie to gross over $200 million in the post-pandemic era. The Marvel Disney film was released on September 3rd and took just under a month to reach that $200 million threshold. Venom, Let There Be Carnage nets $90.1 million at the box office, becoming the highest grossing movie during its release weekend post-pandemic era. And finally, the long-awaited, much delayed James Bond flick No Time to Die, sets to release in American markets October 8th, has $119.1 million across dozens of foreign markets last weekend. All of these numbers come courtesy of The Hollywood Reporter. That's not where they're reported from, but that's where I found them. These three smash hit box office successes show that the theater space looks like it's going to thrive post-pandemic, even after many threats due to mass theater closings, release delays, and the ever-growing streaming service market. Okay, so usually a box office wrap-up won't be so high on my list of news that I write out here, but I thought that this was a big deal, especially for the first show, to just point out that movie theaters aren't going anywhere. I know that there was COVID was definitely a scary time for everyone. For movie theaters, from, my perspective as someone that loves going to a theater to watch movies, there was a period of time when I thought that movie theaters would go away and they would go by the wayside and become a novelty item, like owning a vinyl record player and collecting physical media. And I don't think that is the case. And to be honest, I was never confident that would be the case. And here's why. I mean, look at these numbers. Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings in 3 weeks gets $200 million. I mean, you cannot get that kind of money anywhere else other than a movie theater. And people want to see the movies. There is no bigger financial gain. Movies are expensive. Shang-Chi probably cost like about $200 million before its marketing budget. That was probably its production budget, was $200 million. So if studios are going to fund these movies, they're going to find a way to make money off of them. And the best and biggest way to do that is in a theater. Similarly with Let There Be Carnage. I mean, that's probably $150 million movie. Just off the top of my head, I don't really know. $90 million in its opening weekend. That's huge. That is huge money. And studios want that. And they're going to chase that. And they're going to force theaters to reopen. I don't think that there was ever a reality in which theaters were going to permanently close. And that's why. It's because of the money. So that's why I wanted to bring that up. Theaters are here to stay. Love it or hate it. Theaters are here to stay. More on theaters in a little bit. So let's move on. Number 3, The Many Saints of Newark, The Sopranos prequel film, was released Friday on HBO Max to middling reviews, currently sitting at a 60 on Metacritic. Critics are praising Michael Gandolfini's portrayal of a younger version of his father's famous Tony Soprano character. There is also praise for the production design, costumes, and makeup, although some of the criticism seems to come from the script, which simply fails to do in 100 minutes what The Sopranos did over the course of 6 seasons from 1999 to 2006. Just wanted to bring this up as an example of a movie that potentially had a poor script. Again, I did not see the movie. I just wanted to, give an example of the type of things that I want to be covering in the course of the show. That's all I really have to say about that. The only reason I didn't watch the movie is because I haven't seen the show. And the only reason I haven't seen the show is just because of time and not having any sort of intense desire to seek it out. I probably will watch it in my lifetime. I just have no idea when I'm going to get to it. I have other things that I wanted to watch. Schitt's Creek and Ash vs. Evil Dead drew my attention more than The Sopranos. Not to say that any one is better or worse than the other, but I don't know. I want to watch what I want to watch. Number 4. Oscar-winning Imitation Game writer Graham Moore will make his directorial debut with a gangster flick, The Outfit. The film gets a February 22... Excuse me, I don't know why I said that. The film gets a February 22nd, 2022 release date. Mark Rylance, Oscar-winning supporting actor for Bridge of Spies, will star as the lead. Dylan O'Brien and Zoe Dutch will also star. So, again, not a huge news story, but I just wanted to, again, bring this up as the type of movie that I will be paying attention to. I have never seen The Imitation Game, and I frankly don't want to. I don't know why. It's kind of a long-running bet with one of my friends from high school that we will never watch the movie The Imitation Game, and it's this horrible movie that no one ever wants to see, and it's all in jest. But I don't think I'll ever watch the movie, to be honest. But, Oscar-winning writer Graham Moore makes directorial debut. That's huge. A gangster movie sounds great. Mark Rylance, Oscar-winning supporting actor for Bridge of Spies. I also haven't seen, but, he wins an Oscar for that. That's great. I mean, this is the type of movie that I will definitely be paying attention to. I think that Marvel movies are great for the industry. They bring in a lot of money, bring up a lot of talent. what are the names? The Russo brothers, cut their teeth on shows that I love, like Arrested Development and Community, and they went on to do great things, and they make lots of money, and I'm happy for them. But these are the type of movies that I want to see. Oscar-winning writing, the cream of the crop writing. Those big budget movies, Avengers, that is cream of the crop in a different way, but it's not cream of the crop in what can we be doing with movies that can't be done in any other medium? How can we make the audience feel emotions that cannot be felt in this way from any other medium? I think that these type of movies are the way to get there. But that's just me. Again, watch whatever you want. I watch, during COVID, I think I watched all of the Marvel movies. I think it was during COVID, but I know I watched all of the Marvel movies, all 22 of them, within the course of like 5 or 6 days. It was between semesters. I had a little bit of a break, and I just was like, you know what? Fuck it. I'm going to watch them all. And I did. I watched them all, and, I don't want to make any sort of big blanket statement, but I enjoyed a lot of them. Some of them I thought were pretty flat. They just it's like sometimes you'll have a scene in a movie, in a regular movie, any old movie, you'll have a scene that is just to get from point A to point B, and it just explains what we're doing here, what we're doing there. In the Marvel Cinematic Universe, you have whole movies that are like that, and that's really not that fun to sit through. But that's my soapbox about that. All right, moving on. Number 5, Tick, Tick, Boom, the movie adaptation of the Tony-winning musical, got its first trailer this week via Netflix's own YouTube channel. The film stars Andrew Garfield as a struggling composer in New York in the early 90s. It also stars Vanessa Hudgens and Bradley Whitford. The musical is an autobiographical work written by and about Jonathan Larson, who would later become known for the musical Rent. The film adaptation is being penned by Stephen Levinson, known for writing the book Dear Evan Hansen, and I mean book as in the play, as in the script of the musical, not a novel. The book Dear Evan Hansen, and is directed by Lin-Manuel Miranda of Hamilton fame. Tick, Tick, Boom is set to premiere at AFI Fest on November 10th, have a limited release the weekend after that, and stream on Netflix starting on November 12th. It's a pretty good trailer. Gets me looking forward to the movie. I have some intrigue about it. I don't have a huge love for Rent, the musical, or the musical movie that's based on the musical. It just was never a musical for me, for my taste. It's very fun. I know a lot of people really like it. Something about it just didn't grasp me to it the last time I watched it, but I'm down for a rewatch, but I probably won't have time to watch it between now and the time that Tick, Tick, Boom comes out, and I really do want to watch that. I like Andrew Garfield. I'm interested to see what Lin-Manuel Miranda can do behind a camera. Hamilton was immaculately directed, but can he direct a movie? We'll see how it goes. The trailer looked kind of interesting. The music sounds great, but music was written by what's his name, Jonathan Larson. And he's a professional composer at this point. So very interested to see how it works out. I love movies about struggling actors, struggling artists, as it were. I find them super interesting, super relatable. I'm really looking forward to it. Comes out on Netflix November 12th, so I'll talk about it then. Okay, number 6, Red Rocket, a new movie from the Florida Project writer-director Sean Baker, had its first trailer released this week as well. The film stars Simon Rex and Brie Elrod and takes place in a small Texas town. The film is about Mikey Saber, a porn star at the edge of his career as he returns to his hometown that seems to resent him. Red Rocket premiered at Cannes and is set to be released on December 3rd, 2021 via A24. So a theatrical release here. I just want to say one thing about A24 just before I get into the trailer, which I just watched as well. A24 is a distributor. They're a production company and is a distributor. They go to these festivals like Cannes and I guess every studio kind of does this, but okay, A24 does this too. They might not necessarily make the movie. A24 doesn't hire people to make movies necessarily. They are more of the people that go to these festivals like Cannes, which is spelled Cannes. It's pronounced Cannes. It's from France. In France, I think. It might be in Canada, actually. Hold on, let me look that up. No, it's in France. I was right. Like Cannes or like Toronto International or like New York International film festivals. They'll go to those film festivals and see the movies that are showing. And if they are small movies, they'll pick them up. They'll just buy the distribution rights, and they'll give the movie a wide release that it wouldn't normally get as an investment. They'll invest in the movie. A24 could also find a script, see a script that's pitched to the producers there at A24, the higher ups, the execs, and they'll say, you know what, the script is really good. We don't really know this person, this writer director. Let's give them a small budget, a few $1 million, which is relatively small, and have them make the movie, and then we'll give it a wide release. And A24 does that a lot. So I see a lot of people say, A24, it's a cool artsy movie. A24 is great because it gives people that are struggling a chance to tell their story and give that story a wide release. And that is incredible and immaculate, and other studios should follow in suit of A24. That is amazing. But just because a movie has A24 stamped on its trailer does not make it a good movie. Just wanted to get that out of the way. Now, about Red Rocket, I think it looks great. I think the trailer is awesome. I loved the Florida Project, which, comes from Sean Baker, and this also comes from Sean Baker. I think it's really inventive. I think it's really cool. It's fun. Willem Dafoe did a great job in Red Rocket, and he's a great actor, but he does well under good directors, and that tells me that Sean Baker's a good director. I think that the Florida Project was kind of like, it was told in a way that made it seem like a documentary. The cameras were only there, and they were picking up precious little moments like the kids playing hide and seek in the motel. Like it's cool and fun and intimate. I think Sean Baker's a great director, because just from that movie alone. And I'm interested to see what he does with Red Rocket. I think it'd be good. If it's playing at my local theater December 3rd, I have no reason why I wouldn't go see it. Looks great. Okay, so that's all we have for the news. Let me get into the wrap up of other news, so this is just going to be kind of like a smaller news that I couldn't really fit into a larger article, but I still wanted to report on it. So here is the news wrap up for the week. Clifford the Big Red Dog to be released simultaneously in theaters and on Paramount Plus November 10th. Fantastic Beasts: The Secrets of Dumbledore moves up from July release to April 15th, 2022. The Spanish Film Academy has selected The Good Boss, starring Javier Bardem, as its Oscar selection this year. Korean Film Council selected Escape from Mogadishu, based on a true story action film, for their Oscar selection this year. And real quick, the Korean Film Council is going to be looked at very highly this year because Parasite won Best Picture last year, and they chose that. But for obvious reason. I mean, Parasite's incredible. Okay, let's keep going. Russian actor, this is really interesting. Russian actors Yulia Peresild, along with director Klim Shipenko, sorry for butchering the names there, literally blasted off into space to film their docudrama The Challenge, set for release in 2022, becoming the first feature-length fictional film shot in space, filming on the ISS right now. That is incredible. I feel like people did not talk about that at all. I thought that was such a cool story. And the Wikipedia is really interesting. Go read about The Challenge, Russian film The Challenge. Space race is back on, people. All right, let's keep going. Warner Media had a showcase this week showing off trailers and teasers for upcoming HBO Max shows, including Peacemaker, the Sex and the City revival, the Game of Thrones prequel, and others. Seinfeld is now streaming on Netflix in the incorrect aspect ratio, so much of the original show is cropped out of frame, which is a shame, but it's good that we have Seinfeld again. It was taken off Hulu for months, it seems like. Nafess Williams has been added to the cast of the Whitney Houston biopic, I Want to Dance with Somebody. In this film, Houston will be played by Naomi Ackie. Sounds awesome. For Auld Lang Syne, a new original Peanuts holiday special to premiere on Apple TV+. M. Night Shyamalan to produce Celine Held and Logan George's upcoming film, The Vanishings, at Caddo Lake. Keira Knightley to star in writer-director Matt Raskin's upcoming film, Boston Strangler. Tilda Swinton, George McKay, and Stephen Graham are set to star in Joshua Oppenheimer's upcoming musical, The End. SNL had its 47th season premiere with Owen Wilson hosting this week. Nia Vardalu revealed in an Instagram post that My Big Fat Greek Wedding 3 script is finished. Rustin, a new film from the Obama family's production company Higher Ground, will star Coleman Domingo, Chris Rock, Glenn Turman, and Audra McDonald. And Chestnut is a love triangle film starring Natalia Dyer, Richard Keller, and Danny Ramirez. So there you go. Those are the small news stories for this week. Feel free to look into any of them if any pique your interest. Okay, so what's new this weekend? What's coming out this weekend? What will we be seeing? I'll just run through these real quick. No Time to Die, Lamb, The Rescue, South of Heaven, Mass, and Survive the Game are the movies that are premiering in theaters this weekend. I'm not going to see any of them. I'm not a James Bond fan, and that's obviously the big draw for the week. Some of these other movies sounded interesting when I was researching them. One of them has Jason Bateman, and I think it's Sound of Heaven not Jason Bateman, Jason Sudeikis. I love Jason Bateman. But it has Jason Sudeikis in it, which sounds interesting, and it's an action movie, not necessarily a comedy. I think Jason Bateman's really shown his acting chops recently with Ted Lasso, which is a great show. But yeah, I'm not going to see any movies this weekend. I will actually, on Thursday, I'll be seeing The Evil Dead has a one night revival for the 40th anniversary. My local theater's playing it, or showing it, I should say. So I will be there on Thursday night. But no, I'm not going to see No Time to Die. I will report on it next week if anything big happens, but no, I will not be seeing any of those movies this weekend. So now just a few end of show questions to, get the audience invested in me. Who am I? Hopefully I proved myself over the course of the show, but just a little more about me, some background questions that I just typed out here. This section will probably go away next week, but we'll see. Which platforms do I have and why? Streaming services are a dime a dozen these days, it seems like. So what do I have? I have Netflix. And how do I pay for it? I have Netflix. I share that with my family. I have Hulu. I pay for that myself. I have Amazon Prime, which is paid for through my Prime subscription, which I pay for myself. I used to have Disney Plus, but I don't. So I have Netflix, Hulu, Amazon Prime. Oh, and I also have Apple TV Plus because I got a new phone and there was a promotion there. So I do have Apple TV Plus for the time being. I probably won't re-up that subscription when that ends. I think that Netflix is essential. I think that Hulu is probably essential. And that's kind of it. If you want to watch a movie, you should just be able to pay for it one-off. Depends what you want. Find the streaming service for you. Look at their catalog, see what's what. But I think Netflix is pretty essential. The Criterion Collection has their own streaming service. I'm not sure of the pricing of it, but it's called the Criterion Channel. They have great selection of films. That might be worth it. What are some of my favorite movies? My favorite movie of all time is Boyhood, directed by Richard Linklater. I love Richard Linklater's other stuff. The next question here is actually, what are some of my favorite directors? Richard Linklater's my favorite director, without a doubt. I love his other stuff. The Before trilogy is great. Before Sunrise, Sunset, and Before Midnight, all great movies, 3 of them. Dazed and Confused, great. He's just great. He plays with time so well and tells a story that, like I said earlier, tells a story that cannot be told in any other medium other than movies, especially Boyhood. That movie's incredible. It's also really nostalgic for me. Reminds me of growing up. in that time period. There are scenes of them, of the kids, playing Halo, witnessing their first cell phone. It's very nostalgic. Yeah, a very personal movie. It's great. I love it. Other than that, though, I don't know. I'll watch anything if it's good. I'll watch literally anything. I don't, right now I'm on an Evil Dead kick. I don't know. I'll watch anything. To be continued, I'll say. I don't know. Beetlejuice, one of my favorite movies. I watched that again recently. It made me feel like a kid. It's great. I don't know. To be continued on some of my favorite movies. Another favorite director I'll list is Noah Baumbach, who directed Marriage Story and The Squid and the Whale. I just watched The Squid and the Whale again like a week or two ago. I probably should have included that at the top. It's good. That movie's really good. Rock solid movie. Not his best movie, just because Noah Baumbach, writer-director, just because the script is a little sloppy for him. He writes a airtight script, man. That is great. Marriage Story is great. And so is Francis Ha. So seeing The Squid and the Whale have his only Oscar nomination until Marriage Story, I think, is kind of a poor showing on the Academy's part, because he just did a great job with Francis Ha. He's also co-writer on Fantastic Mr. Fox, which I like a lot. Like that movie a lot. I wouldn't say Wes Anderson's one of my favorite directors. His visual style is very interesting, and his movies are kind of hit or miss for me. But I will probably be seeing The French Dispatch later this month. I still collect physical media, and I will tell you why. Well, the answer was kind of in one of the wrap-up stories. Seinfeld was brought to Netflix, and it was shown in the incorrect aspect ratio. Two things there I don't like. One is that streaming companies can dictate when I can watch shows. If they have the shows or they don't, that means I'm allowed to or not allowed to watch it. And two, they're shown in the incorrect aspect ratio. I want to see the show in exactly how it was made. I want to see it exactly how it was made. I can't think of another good example, but that's why I collect physical media. I don't want to have to search for these movies. If I want to watch a movie, I want to buy it and I want to have it so I can watch it whenever I want. And that's kind of that. And I want to watch it exactly how it was meant to be seen. And that kind of leads me into the next question. What is the ideal circumstance to watch a movie? The ideal circumstance to watch a movie is obviously subjective, but I think the answer for most people is in a crowded theater. And, maybe you don't like going to the theater. I didn't as a kid. I thought there were too many people. But I've gained an appreciation for it as I've gotten older, because you don't really get to experience the crowd when you're watching a movie at home on your TV. Maybe it's closer to your face. Maybe you can hear it better. Maybe you can have whatever snacks you want for free, and it's probably cheaper. But it's a shame that we consume media in the way that we do, and that everything's on Netflix and we can watch whenever we want on our phone or on YouTube or whatever. We can watch clips of a movie and we don't have to watch the whole movie. And you have, jackasses like me talking into a microphone telling you what to watch and what to not watch. You should watch whatever you want. You should pay for it. You should go to the movie theater. You should sit your ass down in a seat surrounded by 100 other people, and you should experience whatever is being shown to you on on the theater. Just like if you've ever seen a live show, like a Broadway type show on stage, those people are there performing for you, so you should give them your complete undivided attention, and you should do the exact same thing for a movie. If you had 3 people in your living room performing for you, it wouldn't be, unless they were, your best friends. But if you didn't know them, if you just hired 3 people to come to your room and your living room and perform a show for you, perform a 3-person show version of Rent, you would not enjoy it nearly as much as if you went to see it in a crowded theater with, as it was meant to be seen. So that's my answer to that. Okay, what a hefty first episode. I feel good about the show. I feel like I said a lot of things I needed to say. It feels good to be talking about movies again. I haven't talked about movies in a long time, and this is a good outlet for me to talk about it because I love them. So I hope this show will come out on Wednesday, but if it doesn't, then it'll be on Thursday. Yeah, okay. So I'll just say I'll see you next week until I figure out a more consistent schedule, but until then, my name is Dylan Paulson. This was What Gets Captured on Film, the first episode. I hope you enjoyed. And, please follow the podcast and listen to whatever comes out next week, whenever it does. Yeah, thanks a lot. Goodbye.